Welcome back to Dr. Skull Games, and today we are going to take another look at an Anatoly Karpov game in under 10 minutes. This is Karpov versus Kasparov from the 1986 World Championship match. This is game 5, and in this game we're going to go through the moves pretty quick and get our takeaways. So Karpov decides to start with d4. E4 wasn't having success, and he's just kind of playing some typical opening moves. Our opponent Kasparov goes into a Grunfeld, and we get this decision in the center. Some trades happen, and this to me is where things get quite interesting, or our first big takeaway moment. So we have some trades that have happened. White is technically up a pawn, but if we look at this pawn here, it looks like this pawn is going to fall at some point, right? It's just going to be impossible. Best case scenario seems like to be able to go here and somehow trade it and leave yourself with these two really awkward, isolated pawns. But black, it seems to me like has quite a bit of compensation here. Black is very close to castling. White is quite far from castling. And the normal move historically has been to come back here to go queen a5. And when I was going through this game earlier, that's what I thought. Black goes back and castles and then kind of goes, okay, white, what are you going to do? I have a dynamic advantage, right? My pieces are more active than yours. How are you going to untangle while I nab your pawn back? And then it's going to be fairly even. And for some reason, this to me is one of the biggest moments of this game, is Kasparov actually takes here, which is a novelty basically. Karpov takes back, and it feels to me like black just gave up everything that it had. All of black's advantages seem to have just, not advantages, but compensation have just gone away. And now when we look at these kings, suddenly I'm thinking like, well, now it's not a rush to castle. This king's awesome. He's supporting the middle pawns. We just activate our pieces. However, we give back this pawn on our own terms and we win. So it's a very interesting decision that he makes that it feels to me like is a real mistake. And like if a newer player were going through this, I would just say like it's total misevaluation of the position, right? We have to recognize here as black what we have. What we have is a dynamic advantage in white not being castled, white being quite far from castling, a weak pawn we can get. We also have this potentially really strong pass pawn that is supported by another pawn. Like we have a lot in our position, and we just give it away in one fell swoop, totally boggling my mind. Okay, so we continue to develop. White takes here, thinking that it's going to be easier to... So black was threatening to take this pawn, and white is fine giving up that pawn. White knows, Karpov knows he has to give back the pawn, but he's going to do it on his own terms. So we go like this, then a little maneuvering, and black lashes out in the center. And when I first looked at this, this was my initial thought. What if I take? If I do, this weakness is very pronounced. If I can swing over here, pick up this pawn, now this pawn is a pass pawn going up the middle, I'm just in business. And so I was pretty tempted when I was going through this move to say I should take. Karpov does not take. Karpov in the next couple of plays makes some really great pawn moves, and he says, okay, but what if I go here? Now this bishop is stuck, kind of garbage. This bishop stuck behind its own pawn, kind of garbage. The rooks aren't doing anything. We basically went from a position where if we'd made my move, everything becomes active. Everything is active. And in fact, I lose material as well, which I missed initially with this double attack. But everything becomes active, and he says, no, we're just going to push by. And then black says, okay, all right. How about here? What are you going to do here? Obvious move is you push by, and you're happy. You've got a pass pawn on d6. You're living large. That was my suggestion. But Karpov makes this brilliant move of saying, well, see, if I go here, then you're just going to bring your rooks over. You're going to pile up on this pawn. I'm going to lose c5. This pawn becomes a weakness now, because now that you're on this file, you've got these two pawns. They're connected. This one's a pass pawn. It's going to get a little bit dicey. What if instead I just push by and I push this pawn up? And now if you take, I just take back and everything's fine. So he says, okay, fine. I'll come over here and I'll pick up this pawn this way. Once again, renewing my threat to go here. This is a weakness now. I pile up on it. I should be fine. And Karpov again says, I'm going to go here. I'm going to give back this pawn, but I'm going to give it back on my terms. So he's going to get the exact same scenario of a pawn here on d6, but instead of having this pawn be a weakness and these two pawns being solid, Kasparov has to take like this, and then after pushing by once more, not taking, maybe it's a little tempting. Now you look at this and you're like, oh my goodness, black is just basically dead here, right? Like this pawn, not a weakness. This pawn, probably a weakness. It doesn't seem like it's going to be that hard to take it. And this pawn, an enormous strength, right? A pass pawn that's totally protected. So that to me is the biggest takeaways of this game, is how he handled these pawns to get to an absolutely winning position. We'll look at the rest. It's a little bit interesting. He pushes here so that they can't connect, but it's not that great. There's some issues with being able to go here and then this pawn falling. So white says, no, I'm going to cover that. He says, fine, I'll reattack it. And white says, I'll cover it again. Another weird play. Like, I was thinking we're going to go here. Same thing, covering this. But the problem is, if we look at this knight, he's got nowhere to go. He's just got nowhere. So Karpov says, no, we're going to go here, because then later in the game, we can go boom, 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 hit this, and support this, and this knight's going to be amazing. So what an important distinction between how I would have played this position and how Karpov sees not just the short term, I'm backing this up, but the long term, backing this up, and then seeing this journey for the knight. Okay, plays a5. What else has he got? He's got a pass pawn. Let's use it. We just go here, again, getting ready with our knight. Goes there again. Brings this guy over. I had initially thought, like, we need to stop this pawn. We need to bring these guys over. But what Karpov is seeing is that in order to move this knight, this pawn needs to be backed up. And then once we get the knight here, this rook will be free once again to roam. So such subtle long-term planning there. The pawn continues to fall down the board. I'm freaking out. If I'm playing the white pieces here, I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to stop this pawn. And Karpov's like, no, I don't. Like, the pawn is not doing anything. I have all day to stop it. And Kasparov's like, boom, this is all I got. The knight reroutes. The knight is now in position. It's hitting everything. Now this guy's free. He doesn't have to guard this pawn anymore. And now the game's basically over. We can see the plan here. It's going to be 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 here. 3 attackers on the pawn. When it falls, black's just down a pawn. This pass pawn's going to win the game. The game's over. Like, even I can see that from this far back. So here, he decides to just, like, sack a pawn out of nowhere, which to me is so telling of, like, you get in trouble, and even Kasparov's like, I don't know, I'll sack a pawn and hope. Like, there's nothing there. Then he just continues his plan. Bring all the pieces in. He first says, I'm fine trading. Like, if we do this trade first, I'm fine. He backs up, says, okay, fine, we'll do it the way I was planning. Backs it up a second time, brings the knight in, and boom, Kasparov resigns and says, you got it. I see it. You got it. So to me, this is just such a fascinating game in how critical it is in evaluating positions, right? So to me, there are 3 utterly critical positions here. The first one is way back here. Do you take this queen or do you go back? It seems to me if you take it, you give up everything. The next critical position is when we get into the situation with the pawns and always having things on his terms, right? Like, I'm going to push the pawn here. I'm going to push the pawn here. I know this pawn is going to fall. I can't stop it from falling, but you know what I can control? How it falls in the resulting position, and just evaluating that well. So that's it. That is Karpov versus Kasparov from 1986, Game 5 of the World Championship. I hope you enjoyed our under 10 minutes recap of the game, and I'll see you next time on Dr. Skull Games.